Okay, so today we're going to be starting to talk about what we do with evidence. So you should all have this in your document now, and I'd like you to zoom in on it so that we can talk about these. Today we're going to be looking at the evidence that we have, or in this case, practice evidence and then the evidence that you have, and deciding if it's strong or if it's not strong, or how strong it is compared to some other things, okay? So we're going to talk about ranking and choosing evidence. And the first parts that I'd like you to look at are these bullets, because these are some of the things that will help you when you're deciding if this quote, and when I say evidence, I do, in this case, mean quotes today. If this quote, or this piece of evidence that you are going to use as proof in your essay, is really strong enough to be used, or if there are other pieces that are stronger. So let's look at the first one up here. It says, how well does each piece of evidence match my specific point? So that means, if you're looking at a specific quote, how well does it support that one? You could be talking about a lot of reasons, maybe, in our practice essay, for example, that somebody might not like competitive sports. They might say it has too much pressure, or it causes too many injuries. But the question is, if you're giving me something about injuries in a part that you're trying to prove pressure, that doesn't necessarily make sense. Or if you're giving me something about the time that it takes away from homework in a place that you're talking about the pressure of people wanting to win, that might not have a specific amount or a specific point that it's attached to in that instance, okay? So the second part is, how hard is this evidence to argue against? Give me 1 second. Okay, so the second one is, how hard is this evidence to argue against? And when I say that, you have to be thinking about things that are easy to argue against, that somebody might just go, that doesn't matter. For example, we were talking this morning in one of my other classes about people saying that competitive sports are really good because they're really fun for kids. They allow kids to have a lot of fun with each other. But why might that argument not be good to use? Why might it be too easy to argue against? What's easy to argue about that? Carol?
That some kids don't have fun.
Some kids don't have fun. What about saying that they do have fun, though? What about arguing
But
about...
they have fun in other ways.
They have fun in other ways. So there's a variety of things that you could argue against really, really easily, okay? So you might be looking for things that are harder to argue against, not something that's easy to argue against as evidence. And if you also follow these arrows, there are some things down here that we're going to come back to in just a minute. How surprising or compelling is this argument? You know that emoji that looks like this? Okay? That is what you want people to hear or feel when they hear your arguments. You want them to be kind of like, whoa, yeah, that's really, I didn't realize that, that's important. Okay? You want people to be a little bit shocked or give evidence that is so strong that they're like, wow. And maybe that's an emotional feel, or maybe it's just really powerful numbers, or maybe it's a quote from somebody who's very, very high up in power about a certain topic, whatever it is you're writing about, in this case, competitive sports. So you want to have some sort of evidence that makes people feel like, whoa, it's so shocking or so compelling that it's really not easy to argue against. Of course, it still needs to be very true. It can't be a one-time incident. What work will this evidence do, and how will I use it to strengthen my argument? You need to ask yourself, what is this trying to prove? What am I trying to show with this? Is this showing that thing? And then these last two, we've added down here, and they're kind of ways to think about how hard it is to argue against something, but they can also stand on their own in some ways too. Is the evidence personal, not about society in general? Or is it only about a one-time event? So if you have something that's really personal, or really just kind of occurred maybe once or infrequently, people are going to argue really easily against that. What are they going to say? What would they say?
It almost never happens.
It almost never happens. Or if I say, well, I'm a really good example of sports, competitive sports, because I'm really good at doing competitive sports up in the pool, and I swim every single day, so it doesn't make me feel too stressed. What's the argument? What are people going to say to that? That's you. Of course you feel that way. You're doing it. Okay? So if it's too personal or only specific to a select number of people or a select group, it's probably easy to argue against. And the last one, is the source reliable or the information up to date? So if we're talking about technology and you guys are researching something about technology and you have a piece of information from 2007 or 2006 about iPads, what's the problem with that?
It's
It's
outdated.
too old. Are the iPads different now than they were in 2006 or 7? Do they have different spaces? Are phones different? Are there new apps? Are there new things that we can do with them? Yes. Now, you also have to think, there are some subjects that 5 to 8 to 10 years maybe isn't that big of a deal. Maybe things haven't changed that much. But to try to find the most recent information you can, and if it's a reliable source. Is this a major publication? Is this somebody who has knowledge on this subject, and how knowledgeable are they? Is this a reliable company or a well-known company? But you also might have to think, if it's produced by Nike and you're talking about sports, do they potentially have a risk to say bad things about sports? Would it hurt their company if they said bad things about sports?
Yes.
Yeah, so you also have to think about the reliability of that source as well as when it was made, okay? So we're going to be looking at some of the evidence that you saw in your articles when we did our evidence chart. And you have it on yours at the very top. Mine is switched with yours. So go to the chart or the picture that looks like this. Do you see it? That's the one you're going to be looking at. Can you find it? Everybody? No? Okay. All right, so the question is at the top. The claim is competitive sports put too much pressure on the kids who play them. And I'd like for you, if yours is not already, to underline, highlight, circle, or star what we're talking about. We're talking about pressure. Putting too much pressure on kids. So there are 3 different pieces of evidence. And some of you guys might recognize these because these are pulled directly from some of the articles that we used in class. Okay? So we're just going to kind of go over these quickly and read them. You might recognize them. And then we're going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses that each one has. Okay, and you're going to do that in a minute by yourselves, or in a minute without me, but with your partners in your groups. So let's just kind of read through these quickly so we have an idea what to talk about when you turn with your groups. The first one says, and I'll read when I pause, you'll fill in the words. While competitive organized sports are often seen as a positive way for your
Child.
to spend his time, some of the pressures of sports could become a
Negative.
impact on kids in general. And then there's our citation. Immediately before the final period, the coach would point to and begrudgingly insert him at right fullback for the requisite minimum amount all kids must
Play.
He made it painfully clear to the others that my
Brother.
there we go, was the weakest of weak links, that he was
Useless.
as a soccer player. And then we have our citation here. And the last one says, one of the most comprehensive
Surveys.
to date by the Centers for Disease Control and
Prevention.
found that from 1997 to 1999, sports and recreation-related
Injuries.
were more common nationwide than
Injuries.
from traffic.
Accidents.
Americans ages 5 to 24 were most likely to be
Treated.
for sports-related injuries by health.
Professionals.
Kids 5 to 14 had the highest
Injury.
rate of all, 59.3 episodes per
1,000.
1,000 people. And there's our citation information there. So my question to you is, what is strong about each of these in reference to this claim? And what is weak about each of these in reference to this claim? But I want you not to be thinking just about the claim. The claim is very important. But we also have a whole list of things above that make things strong or weak evidence. So your job is to look at that and think, okay, we're trying to prove blank. And you're also looking at the bullets that we just talked about, or I just explained to you a minute ago, and seeing if any of those apply. I'm going to ask you to make 3 to 4. How many?
3 to 4.
3 to 4. You sound so excited about that. 3 to 4 notes for each quote, which means you'll have minimum 9, maximum 12. And when I say that, I mean 3. They might all be strong. If you look at a quote in this one, you're like, yeah, oh, this is amazing. They're all strong. You can think of a lot of reasons why this is strong, and I can't think of any why it's weak. Or you might find you can only find 1 strong, and you can find 2 or 3 that are weak. I don't care how you mix up your 3 or 4, but I want you to have 3 or 4 per quote. Does that make sense?
Where from where?
for each one. So for this one, you're going to look at it and decide what's strong or weak. You might have something here, and 2 here. Or you might find you have a lot to say about it's strong. Or you might find that all of these aren't true, and you might find, man, this one's really weak, I don't want to use it. Okay? Then you're going to move to the second one and do the exact same thing. So that you don't have to click back and forth too much, I'm going to ask you to do this on the table. Plus, I know you guys like to do it on tables. Way better. So go ahead and make yourself a strengths and weaknesses chart. Actually make 3 of them, or make one long and divide it into 3 spaces, because you have 3 quotes to try. So while you're waiting for your marker, make sure you are on the right part of your iPad.
Can I
No, because I want you to write the words, not highlight anything. Because you're going to have to tell me the reasons. All right, so wait, actually, something what we're missing. You guys are both missing people. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to do this. Remember, you're doing it for each one, and we're looking at not just the claim, but we're also looking at the reasons above. What makes this particular quote or piece of evidence strong, or what makes it weak? And I'll come around to your tables. Guys, remember that I am not asking you if these support or go against competitive sports. All of these are against competitive sports. I am asking you to decide on reasons that this would be a strong quote to use or a weak quote to use, based on what we know about making good quotes or using good quotes from our bullets here, and what you know about what the claim is, what they're arguing.
It only gives the example one time, and it's only one time.
All right, so look at this list here. These are some of the reasons or that you might consider a quote strong or weak. Okay? You might ask yourself, how hard is this evidence to argue? Or you might say, is the source reliable? Or is it a personal story and just happening once? So let's look at that. Make it move. There we go.
Yeah.
So let's look at that first quote. How hard is this to argue? Or is this information reliable? Is the source reliable? Or is it up to date? So you should be asking yourself these questions about this quote.
Yeah.
Okay, so start at the top.
So, I often choose the oil for your child to study. It doesn't say like it puts in pressure. So
Remember, you should be asking yourself or your partner, and you should be asking each other these questions about the first quote. When you read this, how hard is this evidence to argue? Well, it's blah, 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 blah. What is it doing? You're saying, it's really too easy to argue, then you would mark it weak. It's really hard to argue, then you mark it strong. Ask yourself these kinds of questions. Okay, so we're ready to go. I'm going to do mine a little bit differently because I don't have the space for a chart like you guys did. But we're going to put strengths over here and weaknesses over here. So let's talk about this first one. This first one says, while competitive organized sports are often seen as a positive way for your child to spend his time, some of the pressures of sports could become a negative impact on kids in general. What did we find that were strengths for this one? I know some of you were struggling for that. What do you think, Patty?
It talks about pressure.
Yeah, it's on topic, right? It does connect to the topic that we're looking for. Anybody find other ones? Carol?
It talks about both sides.
It does. You know what it does is it uses a counter, okay? It counters. It mentions the other side. Just like we talked about the other day when you're like, Mom and Dad, I know you're not really interested in me going to parties, but let me talk to you about some reasons why I should be allowed to go, right? Recognizing the other side. So it recognizes, let's actually change this word. It recognizes the other side, okay? It recognizes the other side, which makes us want to listen to it more if we're on the opposing side. The second thing that let's go back up. The next part I want to ask you about is the weaknesses. What about weaknesses that did you find in here, Patty?
It's too general.
Yeah, it's far too general. very, very general. There's nothing detailed about that.
There's no evidence.
Yeah, so there's no specific evidence. We don't have anybody in here that's a major sports person. We don't have any numbers. We don't have a lot of specifics to tie on to. Sarah?
Easy to argue?
Yeah, it's really easy to argue because of that. Okay, what else?
It's not reliable.
What do you mean it's not reliable?
That it doesn't have information that would make you trust.
Okay, so here's the thing. This is what I'm going to argue for and against your point, both ways. So most of my classes have said the same kind of thing. First of all, this person right here, not well known. This one, you guys might not know. Does anybody know livestrong.com? Livestrong.com is a very popular website that has articles about health and nutrition and sports. So, I mean, you can kind of check this one out. It's a very common one. But the other thing is, even if you trust this place, we don't know who this is. So if you're going to use it, you would have to say something like, according to livestrong.com, which is, or, hey, Ireland, who writes for livestrong.com, a major site for blah, blah, blah. You have to give that information out to us to use that quote. Otherwise, it's not really doing much for us. Liam?
It doesn't say the date.
Yeah, we don't have the date on here. Now, my question to you is, though, do we need this date for this?
No,
It might add to our argument a little bit, but I'm not sure if we need it for that. Patty?
it's not surprising.
Yeah, it's not really surprising or compelling. Your readers are not like, ooh, ah, whoa, about any of this. So do you think this one's overall strong or weak?
Weak.
Probably one of our weaker ones, okay? It does talk about the topic we want, but it's not super strong in other ways. Let's look at our second one up here. The second one says, immediately before the final period began, the coach would point to David. This is about the kid's brother, or the author's brother. So what are our strengths for this one? Patty?
It's compelling.
It is compelling. Why do you say it's compelling?
Because it kind of, when it says that the brother didn't even play in the field, so
Yeah.
it makes you feel sad.
It makes you feel bad, and you immediately think,
Poor kid.
poor kid, I don't want kids to feel like this. What else do we have for strengths?
I mean, you have real life example.
It is a real life example, but what did we talk about with? Yeah, with our notes. It is a real life example, but do we have any proof in this occurs frequently?
No.
So where should we put that? Yeah,
It's
because it
true.
happens in real life, yes, but it's only a one-time thing. We don't have any proof in here. We would have to be arguing more like, this is a common occurrence according to, and use something else. Ian?
It's up to date and it's from a well-known website, the Wall Street Journal.
Hold for a second. How did you find that it's from a Wall Street Journal?
Because it says in the link blogs.wsj, which stands for Wall Street
Did
Journal.
you go look for it? Did you pull it up?
No, but like I've seen the links before.
Okay, so you're right. This is that. My other question is the reliability if it's a blog. Are blogs always reliable?
No.
Not necessarily. Is the Wall Street Journal reliable?
Yes.
Yes, it is. My question is here, I'm a little bit concerned about why, or confused about why the Wall Street Journal would have a sports article as opposed
Because
to a
It's,
financial piece, I guess, but we could check this out. This is something that I think could go on both sides. You'd have to do some digging. Patty?
it's too old. I mean, it's not old, but the story happened
Okay.
in 1982.
So Patty did a little more digging. So we learned that it's up to date according to this, 2013.
But
Not that long
It
ago,
was
right?
published in
When it was
2000
published. What about the story itself?
in 1982.
In the article, you had to dig. It says it happened in 1982 when his brother was a kid. So what could people argue against that?
It,
It's too old, but what would they say?
it's now it may not have.
Yeah, now people don't do that anymore. 82? How many years ago is that?
34.
30-something years ago. Okay? So we have 30-plus years where things could have changed. Possibly a concern. Let's talk about our last one now. One of the most comprehensive surveys to date, done by the Centers for Disease Control. Oh, wait. let's back up. I missed a step. Does this connect to our claim of pressure?
No. Doesn't talk
Actually,
about pressure.
I think it does because
Yeah, it does.
It
Is it-
doesn't.
Why are we arguing? I mean, I'm asking you literally. If some people say yes and some people say no, is it super clear?
No.
It might not be super clear.
It's not arguing. It's not saying
doesn't
it's
say
pressure. It's just
pressure.
talking
It doesn't
about.
use the word, and you might say, yes, well, kids feel pressure because they are sitting out, and it's a different kind of pressure. It's pressure from,
Being
like,
accepted.
yeah, being accepted. But is it clear that it's pressure?
But it's mostly talking about the difference between good and bad people.
Good
in
and bad
sport.
people, or being accepted as a player. And so that connection is a little bit weak, okay? So let's look at this bottom one down here. One of the most comprehensive surveys to date by the Center for Disease Control, Prevention, da-da-da-da-da-da. What do we find strong about this one, Patty?
It has important facts like statistics.
It has number facts, which we call
Statistics.
statistics. It has stats, okay? What else? What makes it strong? You want to hold, okay? Carol?
It's hard to argue
It is really hard to argue. Why?
because it has a lot of.
Has a lot of numbers in there.
It's from a really well-known company, the NBC News.
Okay, it is reliable. It comes from NBC News, and we also know that some of the groups and I talked about this as I went around. This is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, I don't know what it's called here, but it's a major government agency in the U.S. So, I mean, it's major and well-known, and it's being reported by a major well-known news source. What about things that make it weak? Nothing.
That it has evidence really old because things may change from that time.
Okay, it has old facts and numbers, right? I mean, it's not like technology. Technology is old if it's a year or two old sometimes, right? But in this case, it's many years old. It's not even from this particular century, okay?
Look,
I mean,
it's 20 years.
20 years ago, almost. 15 to 20 years ago, okay? So while you can say not a lot's changed in competitive sports or people are still getting injured, you might be able to find something that's more recent. What else is weak? Hold on.
It only talks about injuries.
It only talks about injuries, not the topic. So if we're talking about injuries, that's great. Are we talking about injuries?
No.
No. If you want to use this, it has to be in an argument that, or in a paragraph that argues about injuries being a major concern, not in one about pressure. Okay? So I think what we've noticed here is that some of these are really strong and some of these are really weak in different ways. Now, this one has a lot of weak, although it's on topic. This one has compelling things, and it's recent, but it actually occurred, the occurrence of it was 30 years ago. This one has a lot of reliable facts, it's really reliable in the source, and it's hard to argue against, except it's not on topic. So, this one might be great to use in a different paragraph, okay? This one might be on the topic, but I don't know that I would use this one. This one, people would argue really well against it. So are any of these super, super strong? No. This is, I think, our best one here, only if we had a different paragraph. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do right now is go to your flash drafts, please. Go into your flash drafts. Actually, let's pause. Take a picture, take a picture, take a picture. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now is take a picture, stand up, and we're going to put our notes from here that you had, your chart, right inside this. So on yours, you can put it here, or you can put it below where there's probably more space so that we can zoom in and look at it and refer back to it. Okay. So once you've got that picture, put it inside your notes, and then open up your flash draft. Open up your flash draft from yesterday. Open your flash draft from yesterday. In your flash drafts, how many of you guys did have at least 2 pieces of evidence in there? It's okay if you didn't, because it was a flash draft, and we didn't know. We're starting the unit. So in your flash draft, if you have 2 pieces of evidence, pick 2 out that you think you really like. If you're somebody who didn't have either any or you only had 1, you're going to have 1 starter step before this. you're going to have to go into your evidence chart and go grab two that you want to be using to look at. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate and rank the evidence that we have for our own arguments. So what quotes did you use, or if you didn't use any yet, what quotes do you want to use? And I'm going to have you do the exact same thing. You are going to make a strengths and weaknesses chart for two of those pieces of evidence. And you're going to tell me, ooh, it's totally strong, just look at this. Or you might find, it's about half and half. Maybe I should be more specific in how I use it or use another one. Or you might go, whoa, not that strong. I should change it. So I'm going to ask you right now to make two of these, one for each of the quotes. So if you have to go digging and get some first, because you didn't already use them, that's okay. If you know that you have some, pick the two that you want to use and make your strengths and weaknesses chart. You can make it on Notability, or you can make it on the desk. It doesn't make any difference to me. Strengths and weaknesses. You're doing the exact same thing that you just did, but with your quotes that you used in your essay. Or if you didn't use any yet, the ones you want to use in your essay. Okay? So I should see you guys making right now strengths and weaknesses charts. You may or may not have a chance to finish this in class, and you may have to finish it at home. So start it here, but you may have to import this picture into Notability later. Okay, I'd like to pause here for 1 second. So what I want to talk about now is what you're going to be doing with this. So you may not finish. If the bell rings, you can take a picture, put it on Notability, fill it in later at home. But your homework is to fix or change your two pieces of evidence in your flash draft. And what that means is, if you find that yours is incredibly strong, or you believe that it's incredibly strong based on our lesson today, you will congratulate yourself, give yourself a pat on the back, and keep it. If you find that one of yours, or both of them maybe, are like, or a little bit weak, too weak to leave in there, then what will you do? Fix or change it. My request to you is this. If they are both good and you're keeping them, just highlight them so that you know where they are and I can talk about it with you. If they, wait, don't back up. If they are not good and you change them, please, 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 use the strike through. Do you guys know what that means, the strike through?
No.
The words that look like this.
Oh.
Like that. Okay? Use the strike through so that I can see what you had and what you changed it to.
What
okay?
happened if I only have one because I didn't get to the
Then
paragraph
find one more
2,
from your evidence chart.
and I do the body paragraph 2? Or?
No, but one more that could go in that
Oh,
paragraph.
okay.
Okay? All right, so you need to do two on the chart right here, and then either go fix them or highlight and leave them so that I know which ones they are in your flash draft.